What if the quiet hours we call rest are not an absence of work, but a different kind of work, slow and deliberate, happening just out of sight, while we breathe evenly and feel the weight of the day lift? A shift in purpose rather than a shutdown, a change of light rather than a power outage, a night crew taking over the same building and tending to rooms that are easier to reach when the corridors are calm. We step into evening with the familiar wish to pause, which is natural and kind. Yet within us, the organ that gives rise to thought and memory follows a timetable of its own. And our shared question tonight is how this hidden timetable serves us without asking for our attention. We begin gently, with the outline of a system that has carried us from childhood to this moment, a living network that moves through cycles with a rhythm so steady we only notice it when it falters. During the day, our attention faces outward, and the stream of sights and tasks and decisions is fast, while at night, attention softens and turns inward, making room for maintenance and recalibration. The body grows heavy on the mattress, the chest rises and falls with a pattern that becomes unhurried, and yet the brain continues to exchange signals, not randomly, but in waves that carry meaning about what needs to be strengthened, what needs to be trimmed, and what simply needs time. We can name these waves in simple language, so that the terms feel hospitable rather than technical. When we are alert and engaged, the electrical patterns that many laboratories observe are relatively fast and variable. As relaxation deepens, the patterns slow in a way that is compatible with calm, wakefulness, a bridge between focus and drowsiness. With the onset of true sleep, the rhythm slows further, and during some periods it becomes strong and wide, a sign that large groups of neurons are settling into a coordinated tempo that supports physical repair and the orderly filing of the day's experiences. Later, at intervals through the night, the rhythm quickens and becomes mixed again. Breathing changes slightly, and vivid inner imagery becomes possible. These cycles repeat in a sequence that is not arbitrary, and many of the practical benefits we feel in the morning arise because the sequence is protected. If we think of the brain as a large library, daytime is when the public comes and goes, questions are asked, doors swing, and helpful voices guide visitors to the right shelves. Nighttime is when the doors are locked, the lights are lowered to a kinder tone, and the staff moves through the aisles to collect returns, repair bindings, and update the catalogue so that tomorrow's visitors find what they need without strain. One possibility is that much of the emotional ease we feel after good rest comes from this backroom work, not only from the muscles recovering, but from the systems that interpret meaning aligning themselves again. There is also a form of cleaning that does not resemble soap and water, yet serves a similar end. Inside the skull, spaces between cells gently widen during certain stages of sleep, and clear fluid circulates more freely, carrying away byproducts of a day of thinking. This process is not total or dramatic, and it happens every night, which is another way of saying that respect for rest is a daily practice rather than an emergency measure. It remains uncertain whether this movement of fluid is the single key to long-term brain health, or simply one helpful component among many. Yet the pattern suggests that quiet hours are not idle hours. When the night crew turns to memory, the metaphor shifts from maintenance to editing. We do not keep a perfect record of every detail, and that is a kindness. A well-ordered memory favors the useful, the meaningful, and the patterns that will help us tomorrow, while allowing what is redundant to fade. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that sleep helps us separate the essential shape of an impale experience from the noise that surrounded it, so that we can act with less burden the next day. A competing view suggests that the act of sleeping simply stabilizes what learning already achieved during the day without adding structure of its own. Both views sit within the boundaries of ordinary research practice, and both point to the same practical advice for a calm life, which is to pair practice while awake with respect for the night. As for the images and stories that arise behind closed eyes, we can speak of them without promising a single function. One possibility is that dreams offer a safe rehearsal space, where emotions can be felt and rearranged while stress chemistry remains muted, allowing us to revisit difficult scenes with gentler consequences. A minority view holds that dreams are side effects of other processes, narrative surfaces forming over deeper adjustments that do not require storytelling at all. Whatever their role, the timing of these vivid periods within our nightly cycles suggests that they participate in a larger design, and that design values alternation, not constant intensity. If this is the paradox we carry to bed, that rest is active in a different way, we can also notice how it shapes decision-making. Many of us have experienced the difference between forcing a solution at midnight and seeing the path with less effort in the morning. One possibility is that during the night the brain reviews recent choices at a slow pace and weakens unhelpful associations, so that when we wake the field is less cluttered and a workable path is easier to see. It remains uncertain whether this review is conscious in any meaningful way, yet the outcome feels familiar, a kind of readiness that does not require fanfare. We are, in short, cared for by a rhythm that does not depend on our constant supervision. The schedule runs whether or not we think about it, and our role is simply to give it room, to dim the light when we can, to lower the noise around us, and to let the cycles complete their turn. When we treat evening as a partner rather than an obstacle to productivity, we discover that the quiet labor of the night returns value in the morning, not as a sudden windfall but as steady clarity. As we move further into the series tonight, we will take up the details of these cycles with patience, define any remaining terms in a single breath when they first appear, and mark clearly where we cross, from established findings to careful possibilities. For now it is enough to rest in the shape of the paradox itself, to feel how a day can make sense because a night made space, and to trust that while the room grows still, the library within us continues its gentle work. Tonight we set our pace with care, the way one might choose a footpath that favors level ground and steady breath, and we begin by explaining how this story will unfold so that you can relax into it without effort, knowing what comes next and when to let the mind wander. Our format is simple and kind. We start with a small bundle of checked facts, stated in plain language. We name the anomaly that makes those facts interesting. We offer several branches that could explain it while marking which are established and which are possibilities, and we close by tracing calm implications for daily life, community, and the shared world we inhabit, before settling into a soft circle of gratitude and quiet goodnight. Because definitions make unfamiliar words friendlier, we will keep them short and give them only once at first mention. When we speak of electroencephalography, or EEG, we mean the gentle measurement of the brain's electrical rhythms at the surface of the head. When we say circadian rhythm, we mean the internal timing system that repeats about every 24 hours and coordinates sleep, temperature, hormones, and alertness with the cycle of light and dark. When neurotransmitters are mentioned, we simply mean the chemical messengers that allow one nerve cell to send a signal to another, and when hormones are discussed, we mean messages carried in the blood that guide processes across the whole body. With those anchors in place, the rest of the language will feel like ordinary conversation. Our map for tonight follows a broad arc from observation to meaning. First, we will touch the observable structure of sleep, which repeats in cycles that last roughly an hour and a half, drifting through lighter stages and deeper stages, and returning to periods when the eyes move quickly under closed lids and vivid inner images tend to arise. Along the way, we will note that heart rate and breathing adopt a slower pattern, muscles relax, and yet brain activity shifts rather than stops. We will then shape these observations into a question, our anomaly, which asks how rest can include such organized activity and what purpose that activity serves. From that question, we branch carefully. One branch considers maintenance, where nightly processes support cellular housekeeping and keep the system clear for tomorrow. Another branch considers memory, where experiences from the day are stabilized and placed into context. A third branch considers emotion, where feelings soften and are arranged in ways that help us act with steadier judgment. A fourth branch considers creativity and problem-solving, where novel connections appear after a quiet interval. A fifth branch turns to the immune system and the patterns that support resilience. To keep our balance, we will identify what is well supported by research and what is still an open path. We will also speak about identity in a gentle way, not as a sharp question but as the familiar experience of waking and knowing who we are after hours of altered awareness. This continuity has practical value, and the format gives it room without forcing an argument. When the time is right, we will place a short disclaimer that reminds us which statements are measured findings and which are framed as possibilities. The first of these reminders will appear at the midpoint of the longer journey, and a second reminder will appear later, both worded softly so that the listener feels guided rather than warned. Because sleep is personal but also social, our map includes a section that looks outward with care. We will consider how stable rest patterns support safer work, clearer learning, and kinder conversation, and how light, noise, and routine can be shared in ways that make rest easier for families and neighborhoods. We do not issue instructions or medical advice. Instead, we describe patterns that many people have found helpful, such as dimming the environment toward evening, favoring quieter tones, and allowing enough time for several cycles to complete. When numbers appear, they will be approximate unless they refer to well-known constants, because our aim is to ease the mind rather than to reduce experience to a single figure. Our cadence will match a relaxed reading pace so that breath can stay even. Long sentences will carry gentle images, and short sentences will offer small rests. The narration keeps an inclusive we voice because the night is shared, and understanding also feels shared when we speak that way. We avoid sharp turns of mood so that the body does not prepare for action, and we keep metaphors familiar, choosing libraries, workshops, and gardens over imagery that stirs alarm. If a claim could be taken as private or proprietary to a particular presentation style, we will reframe it in general terms. And where an idea seems to combine several public threads into a single interpretation, we will label it as inference, using clear language that never outruns the evidence. To help you settle, we will keep the production rhythm predictable. Each major section begins with a calm statement of purpose, offers a few carefully chosen details, then ends with a line that loosens the grip and invites the mind to drift. If your thoughts wander during any passage, the structure will bring you back without effort, because each section echoes the last. This echoing is deliberate, not to repeat content, but to repeat calm. A word about uncertainty can also be reassuring. Science advances by asking questions and by letting strong methods test those questions. When we say it remains uncertain whether a detail has one primary explanation or several overlapping ones, that is not a failure of understanding but a sign that care is being taken. One possibility is that many nightly benefits arise from the interaction of several small processes rather than from a single master switch. A competing view suggests that one or two dominant processes drive most of the outcomes, and the others are supportive. As we move forward, we will keep both views in mind, and we will mark them clearly so that you can rest inside honest boundaries. The final movement of the format returns to hope in a gentle register. After we explore the branches and the implications for individuals and communities, we will gather a quiet meta-lesson that centers humility, cooperation, and responsible curiosity. We will affirm that noticing the night's hidden work tends to make daytime kinder, not because every question is solved, but because respect for limits and rhythms softens our choices. Then, we will slow the cadence, lower the informational density, and leave you with a small, steady picture of care that continues while you sleep. This is our map. Nothing in it requires effort from you. The structure exists to carry you, to make space for easing, and to keep curiosity warm without waking the body to full alert. With the doorway open and the path clear, we can step into the first bundle of shared facts, knowing where we are and how gently we will move. We begin with a calm set of shared observations, spoken in gentle language, so that the foundations feel steady beneath the rest of our journey. When researchers record the brain's electrical rhythms at the scalp, a method called electroencephalography, or EEG, they see patterns that change with our state. During alert wakefulness, the rhythms are relatively fast and mixed, and many laboratories refer to the faster elements as beta activity. As we unwind without yet sleeping, the pattern slows and smooths, often called alpha, which tends to appear when the eyes are closed and attention grows quiet. With the first light stage of sleep, the rhythm shifts again toward theta, a slower pattern that marks the threshold where awareness begins to loosen. In the deepest non-dreaming periods, the waves broaden into delta, large and unrushed, signaling that wide networks are moving together at a pace suited for restoration. Sleep itself is commonly described in stages. The first drowsy entry is called N1. It often lasts only a brief time and can be felt as a drifting, where outside sounds still reach us, yet carry less weight. The second stage, N2, makes up the largest portion of a typical night. In this stage, the EEG shows features called sleep spindles and K-complexes, short bursts and distinctive peaks that are thought to protect sleep and support learning. The third stage, N3, is sometimes called slow-wave sleep or deep sleep, and is rich in delta activity. During N3, the body tends to release more growth-supporting signals, The immune system coordinates important work, and the brain's energy use becomes more even. After these non-rapid eye movement stages comes a different state called REM, for rapid eye movement. When the eyes dart beneath closed lids, most skeletal muscles are relaxed into near atonia. Breathing and pulse become more variable, and vivid inner imagery often arises. These stages do not arrive once but cycle through the night. A typical full cycle lasts on the order of an hour and a half, though it varies with age, health, and timing. In the first third of the night, N3 tends to be more prominent, while in the last third, REM tends to lengthen. This pattern means the early hours favor physical recovery, and the later hours grant more opportunity for narrative inner experience. The alternation itself is part of the design, because no single stage can serve all nightly needs. We can also notice how the body's housekeeping follows this rhythm. As we pass from wakefulness into non-rapid eye movement, sleep, heart rate, and breathing settle into a slower pattern, the pupils remain still, and body temperature begins its nightly dip under guidance from the internal clock, the circadian system that aligns us with the 24-hour cycle of light and dark. In REM, heart rate and breathing become more variable again, often tracking the vividness of inner scenes, while thermoregulation relaxes slightly. Across all stages, the brain remains active, yet the type of activity changes, suggesting a shift in priorities rather than a halt. The language of waves and stages can sound technical, so we lean on plain images that match the measurements. Beta during the day is like a busy plaza, with many small conversations crossing paths. Alpha, as we close our eyes, is more like a garden path, slower and continuous. Theta, at the edge of sleep, is the threshold where doors inside the house begin to open. Delta, in deep sleep, is the steady hum of a maintenance team moving in a shared rhythm. REM is the rehearsal hall where scenes are tried, feelings are explored, and the lighting changes often. These images are not proof, only a way to let the terms rest lightly while we keep our footing in what research has seen repeatedly across many studies. Several observations link these patterns with everyday benefits. After nights that include sufficient N2 and its sleep spindles, people often perform a little better on tasks that require learning sequences or recognizing patterns. After nights with strong N3, many report feeling physically restored, and measures of reaction time and attention tend to improve. After periods that include REM, the recall of emotional material becomes more balanced, and some people find that a complex problem feels less tangled in the morning. These are associations that have been observed in controlled settings and in ordinary life, and they point to the value of allowing the full sequence of stages to unfold. The internal clock deserves a clear place in this fact pack because timing shapes quality. The master pacemaker in a tiny region of the brain keeps approximate 24-hour time and coordinates hormone release, body temperature, and alertness curves so that sleep pressure rises across the day and eases at night. Light, especially in the morning, helps set this clock, while irregular late light can push it later. When the clock is aligned with one's schedule, the brain tends to enter sleep more smoothly and move through deeper stages earlier, making the whole night feel more efficient even if the total duration is unchanged. We also acknowledge the gentle tug of age on this architecture. Newborns cycle quickly with abundant REM, children enjoy generous deep sleep, and many older adults see N3 shorten, and awakenings become more likely. These changes sit within the wide range of human variation and do not by themselves signal a problem. The patterns help explain why different seasons of life feel different at night and why expectations benefit from kindness. A short word on measurement helps hold the frame steady. EEG sees broad patterns across the scalp rather than individual cells, and it is paired with sensors for eye movement, muscle tone, airflow, and oxygen to build a fuller picture in a sleep laboratory. At home, simpler tools tend to estimate stages indirectly by movement and pulse, which can be helpful for patterns but are less precise. Knowing this allows us to treat numbers as guides rather than verdicts. We keep distinctions clear. The waves and stages we have named are part of common sleep science and have been described across decades of peer-reviewed work. Claims that a single stage is the sole source of a complex benefit, such as creativity or emotional balance, move beyond established ground and will be marked as possibilities when we explore them. When we discuss nightly cleaning of byproducts, often called glymphatic flow, We will describe the evidence and its limits in the sections that focus on maintenance. For now, our task is only to hold the architecture in view. What matters for a gentle life is less a perfect score and more a rhythm that repeats. When we plan evenings that allow several cycles to complete, the stages tend to arrange themselves without micromanagement. When we rise at a similar time, the internal clock learns to expect light and movement, and the next night's pattern is easier to begin. These are broad observations, not prescriptions, and they function as context rather than advice. With the basic map in place, we can turn next to the curiosity that gives the map its spark. If sleep is structured rather than blank, if waves and stages continue their careful alternation while we rest, what is the anomaly that keeps scientists and artists and ordinary sleepers interested? It is the simple question of how rest can include such organized work, and what the night accomplishes that the day cannot. We will name that question directly, and then open the branches that might answer it, one careful step at a time. Before we continue into the deeper parts of tonight's science, we pause to make space for comfort, because a calm body welcomes a calm mind, and a calm mind hears and remembers only what it needs, while letting the rest flow by like water. Where you are listening now becomes part of the story, not as a demand to change anything, but as an invitation to notice simple details that support ease. Perhaps there is a pillow that holds the head at a natural angle, perhaps a chair that lets the spine settle into its own curve, perhaps a space on the floor where the breath meets the belly without effort. We do not prescribe positions or routines. We simply acknowledge that listening improves when muscles are not negotiating with gravity more than they must. Pace matters, and we choose it gently. The cadence tonight is closer to the speed of a relaxed walk than a hurried step, because nerves favor signals that arrive at a manageable rate, and attention favors language that allows time for images to form without crowding. When the voice lengthens its sentences and then offers a brief resting line, listeners tend to mirror that rhythm in their own breathing. And breathing that slows without strain becomes a quiet guide for the rest of the body. The effect is modest, yet it is reliable enough to treat with respect. One possibility is that this steady cadence reduces unnecessary shifts of alertness, allowing the brain to carry on its internal work while still receiving the thread of the narrative. Sound itself can be a friend when it arrives without sharp edges. Some recordings are best enjoyed at a lower volume than speech during the day, because soft sound invites the ears to open rather than brace. When background noise is present, such as distant traffic or household movement, the mind can be encouraged to welcome it as part of the nighttime landscape, neither enemy nor signal, simply the environment being itself. A competing view suggests that true silence is always preferable. It remains uncertain whether one approach suits everyone, and because comfort is local, we accept that each listener may find a personal balance between quiet and the gentle presence of sound. Light is the other half of the evening atmosphere. The internal clock pays attention to brightness, and dimmer light in the hours before rest gives that clock a clear message. We will not set exact values or prescribe devices. Instead, we trace a principle that many have found helpful, which is to let the room grow softer in tone as night approaches, and to choose sources that do not invite the eyes to reach too far. Curtains, shades, or simply the act of turning away from strong screens for a while can serve this principle. If screens are part of your routine, placing them a little farther away or reducing their intensity can be enough to change the feeling of the room. These are patterns, not rules, and the aim is hospitality rather than control. Pace also applies to thoughts, and thoughts respond well to clear expectations. At the outset, we set the expectation that nothing needs to be remembered in detail, and that permission helps the mind relax its grip on each sentence. The narrative is designed to be repeatable without becoming demanding. If attention wanders, it will be gently collected by a familiar structure in the next section. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that kindness toward distraction prevents the feedback loop, in which noticing a drifting mind causes it to drift further. By naming the drift as acceptable, we reduce that loop's fuel. Because this is a shared space across many places, we make room for a light gesture of community that does not raise energy. If you would like to share where you are listening from or the local time, you are welcome to leave a quiet note when you are ready. The invitation is optional and easy to ignore, and it exists only to widen the sense that many people are walking the same evening path in their own homes, hearing the same gentle explanations, and finding company in a calm curiosity that spans distance. There is no expectation of reply or engagement during the night. The night belongs to rest. Hydration, temperature, and clothing can influence comfort, and we speak of them as ingredients rather than instructions. A sip of water when the mouth is dry, a blanket when the air feels cool, a lighter layer when it feels warm. These are simple adjustments that can turn listening into settling. The brain does not ask for elaborate preparations. It benefits when small signals from the body indicate that conditions are safe and stable. When shivering or overheating is avoided, the next step in the nightly cycle arrives more readily, and the material we share can sit lightly without competing with the body's needs. We also consider posture of attention, which is different from physical posture and just as real. A helpful posture of attention during sleep science storytelling is receptive rather than effortful, like watching a tide move in and out without the need to measure each wave. If an image lands and feels helpful, keep it long enough to feel its shape. If it passes through, let it go. Receptivity does not mean passivity. It means trusting that hearing once is enough for tonight, because the night will handle much of the integration, and tomorrow will offer more opportunities to understand. Questions often arise about multitasking, such as tidying a room while listening to a calm narrative. One possibility is that light, repetitive tasks can coexist with gentle learning if they do not require decisions or sudden shifts of focus. A minority view holds that any movement dilutes the effect. It remains uncertain whether the difference matters for most people, so the practical path is to notice how your own mind responds. If the words begin to thin and meaning becomes hard to hold, pause the movement or return to stillness. If the words remain clear and the movement stays quiet, accept that balance for what it is tonight. We affirm again that none of this is medical advice. These are observations about atmosphere and pace that many find supportive, and they are optional by design. The goal is not to construct a perfect routine, but to remove a few common sources of friction so that the brain's nightly sequence can proceed without unnecessary interruption. Routine can be kind, and kindness in routine can be flexible. Travel, guests, weather, and life will bend the schedule from time to time, and the science we share holds steady even when the evening does not follow a plan. As this section closes, take one slow breath that begins in the belly, rises to the ribs, and eases out through the nose or mouth, whichever feels more natural. Notice if the jaw can loosen a little, if the tongue can rest a little lower, if the shoulders can sink a finger's width toward the bed or chair. The purpose of the breath is not to achieve a state, but to mark a transition. We have prepared a space for listening. We have agreed on a pace that respects the night. We have invited community without obligation. Now the path returns to the science, which will feel familiar and new at once, because the facts have a shape, and each listener brings a life that gives those facts meaning. We have a shared map and a steady pace, so we can now place 3 curiosities on the table, each one ordinary to experience, and yet striking when examined closely, like familiar landmarks seen at night from a quiet hill. The first is that the brain maintains organized activity while the body rests, not as a faint afterglow but as coordinated work that follows a schedule. The second is that inner images during certain periods of the night can feel vivid and emotionally charged, at times more colorful or immediate than scenes from the day. The third is that time inside those inner scenes does not always match the clock on the bedside table, expanding and compressing in ways that leave us wondering how the mind keeps its calendars. These are our anomalies, and naming them together will help us explore the branches that may explain them. We begin with the city that never sleeps inside the skull. Measurements made in many laboratories show that nighttime is not a blank field. Instead, it is a landscape of shifting rhythms and coordinated patterns that repeat in cycles. The building blocks are electrical waves, small bursts of coordinated firing, and carefully timed pauses, each linked to useful outcomes the next day. Deep sleep brings broad, synchronized waves that support physical restoration and the stabilization of memory. Lighter non-rapid eye movement sleep carries short protective bursts, known as spindles, that appear to shield the sleeper from minor disruptions and to support learning. Rapid eye movement sleep adds variability and vivid inner experience while the major muscles rest. The surprise is not that activity continues, but that it continues with such order while outward behavior quiets. One possibility is that this order reflects a division of labor between day and night. Daytime favors rapid responses to outside events, while nighttime favors inward maintenance that requires silence from the senses. A competing view suggests that the same processes run at all hours and only become easier to observe at night because outside signals stop competing. It remains uncertain whether a strict division or a fluid continuity better captures the truth, yet the outcome is stable in both pictures. The night supports the day by handling tasks that are more efficient when interruptions are few. The second curiosity rises when eyes are closed, yet scenes bloom with clarity. During rapid eye movement sleep, the visual system becomes active, even without light. Emotional circuits become more responsive, and the frontal regions that usually check for consistency relax their control. The result can feel like a private cinema, with narratives that carry strong feeling and imagery that seems newly minted. People often report colors, faces, and places that feel convincing while they are present and fade upon waking. This vividness is not constant for everyone or every night, and it can vary with age, stress, and timing, but its presence across cultures invites calm attention. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that these scenes serve rehearsal and integration. Emotions can be felt without the full stress chemistry of wakefulness, allowing difficult material to be softened and reorganized. A competing view suggests that dreams are surface patterns that form while deeper work proceeds, as steam forms patterns on a window while water boils below. One possibility is that both views are partly right, with some dreams arising as meaningful rehearsals and others as decorative byproducts of adjustments happening elsewhere in the system. It remains uncertain whether specific dream themes consistently map to specific functions, so our language tonight will honor the experience without making claims that outrun the measurements. The third anomaly concerns time. In dreams, a moment can stretch into a long journey, or a long real interval can hold an instant's worth of story. Upon waking, we may say the dream lasted hours, while a simple glance at the clock suggests minutes. Researchers who have invited sleepers to signal from within dreams have found that some counted intervals roughly match waking time, while the story within those intervals weaves in and out of sequences in a way that does not track the clock. This mismatch does not break our mornings. We wake, orient to the day, and begin. Yet it points toward a flexible way the brain organizes experience when external anchors loosen. One possibility is that the brain compresses and expands internal sequence, the way a music editor can change tempo without changing tone, preserving the order of important beats while letting less crucial material pass quickly. A minority view holds that the sense of time in dreams is reconstructed upon waking, a narrative placed over traces that were not experienced as a clock during the night. It remains uncertain whether either account covers all cases. What the observations do support is a general point that helps us rest kindly. The brain tracks more than one kind of time, and the kind used at night is allowed to bend, so that memory, emotion, and learning can find the space they require. When we stack these three curiosities together, their edges touch. The city that never sleeps suggests internal work that benefits from calm corridors. The vivid dream suggests a training ground where feelings and ideas can be tried with lower stakes. The flexible clock suggests that the training ground is not bound to the same schedule as the street outside. None of this demands agreement on a single purpose. Instead, it invites steady exploration of overlapping roles that, together, produce the morning's sense of readiness. The anomaly stack also carries a social thread. Many people notice that conversations after a good night feel easier, not because facts multiplied, but because unnecessary weight fell away. One possibility is that the night helped sort which connections belong in the front of the mind and which can rest in the archive. It remains uncertain whether this sorting is directed by a single program or by many small rules working at once, yet the result helps communities. Clearer mornings tend to be kinder mornings, and kinder mornings help shared spaces feel safer. There is an ethical note in this stack as well. If vivid inner experience and flexible time are normal properties of the night, then modesty about memory is wise. Stories we tell ourselves in the morning may be honest and still be partial. Humility about detail protects understanding, and cooperation with evidence protects trust. These are not heavy duties. They are gentle habits that allow curiosity to remain warm without tightening into certainty. Finally, the environment enters quietly. Light and noise in our shared neighborhoods influence how easily the nightly order can run. A street that keeps brightness high at all hours may help safety while placing pressure on circadian timing. A home that leaves room for quiet signals to be heard may help the night do its work while still honoring daily life. There is no single rule that fits every place, only a recognition that the world outside the window and the world within the skull are in conversation, and that small changes in one can help the other. We will carry this stack forward as we open each branch in turn. Maintenance, memory, emotion, creativity, and immunity each have a role to play, and the city, the cinema, and the bending clock will serve as steady images while we move through them. With the anomalies named and resting in view, our next step is to examine the first branch, the quiet housekeeping that keeps pathways clear for tomorrow. We enter the first branch with a simple picture that carries both science and ease. The picture of a night crew moving through a familiar building with lights low and doors open. A team that knows every hallway and returns each evening to repeat essential tasks that cannot be rushed during the day. And in our case, that crew includes fluid currents, cellular caretakers, and circuits that coordinate their timing with a patience that rewards us when we wake. The maintenance story begins with space, because space is what allows the cleaning to flow. During portions of deep, non-rapid eye movement sleep, the tiny gaps between brain cells widen enough to change how clear fluid moves. And this gentle widening appears to let byproducts from a day of thinking travel more freely toward pathways where they can be carried away. One possibility is that this nightly flow prevents gradual buildup of waste and keeps the tissue's chemistry in a range that favors stable signals the next day. It remains uncertain whether this single process explains long-term brain health on its own, so we will hold it as an important piece within a larger set of caretaking actions. Maintenance also sounds like a set of rhythms, and here the electrical waves measured at the scalp point to internal coordination. In slow-wave sleep, many neurons fire together and then rest together in repeating patterns that are large enough to see at the surface, and these slow oscillations appear to pace shorter events, such as sleep spindles, brief bursts that arise most strongly in stage N2 and still occur within deeper periods. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that the large wave acts like a conductor's hand, lifting and lowering in time while specialized sections of the orchestra come in at the right moments, opening gates that let information pass and then closing them to protect quiet. Inside this rhythm, a different kind of housekeeping unfolds at the level of synapses, the tiny points where one neuron signals another. During a typical day, many synapses strengthen as we learn and adapt, and the overall energy cost of holding all of those gains can rise. One possibility is that parts of sleep allow a gentle recalibration in which the strongest and most useful connections are preserved, while others are trimmed, returning the network to a state where important signals can stand out without the background becoming too loud. A competing view suggests that what looks like global recalibration is in fact a more selective process that targets specific pathways tied to recent learning, and that general energy savings are a side effect rather than the aim. It remains uncertain whether the recalibration is mostly global, mostly selective, or both in different neighborhoods of the brain, yet the shared message is steady, which is that the night helps restore contrast so tomorrow's learning remains efficient. From maintenance we move toward memory, because the two often travel together. When we take in new information during the day, the hippocampus, a curved structure in the medial temporal lobe, acts like a temporary staging area that can rapidly bind pieces of an experience into a pattern we can recall, and during sleep, traces of that pattern appear to be replayed in shortened form while neocortical regions receive the timing and reinforce longer-lasting representations. Experiments in both animals and humans suggest that these replays occur at a quicker pace than the original experience, and often align with sleep spindles and the slow oscillations that frame them. One possibility is that this coordinated timing allows memories to settle into a form that is both more stable and more flexible, preserving gist while letting exact detail fade when detail no longer serves us. A competing view suggests that consolidation depends less on sleep timing and more on the depth of learning achieved while awake, with sleep mainly stabilizing what practice has already accomplished. It remains uncertain whether timing mechanisms add structure beyond stabilization, but the practical consequence is similar, as pairing effortful study or practice with adequate sleep tends to produce better recall and performance than effort alone. We can also speak of a quiet art that memory performs while we rest, the art of linking related material across time. When experiences share themes, Sleep seems to help extract common threads so they can be used in new contexts, and this gist building feels like another form of housekeeping that reduces clutter without losing meaning. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that replay during the night is not a simple copy function, and that the same network can weave material from separate days into a more general map. A minority view holds that gist building is an artifact of testing methods, and that what looks like abstraction is just selective forgetting of details. It remains uncertain whether a single mechanism explains these outcomes, so our language will recognize the pattern without leaning on certainty. Forgetting deserves a kind tone in this story, because forgetting within limits is a gift. A library that never discards a pamphlet becomes hard to use, and a mind that keeps every scrap with equal strength is not a mind at ease. One possibility is that sleep supports targeted weakening of traces that are redundant or misleading, and that this selective forgetting improves clarity without harming wisdom. A competing view suggests that the apparent weakening is simply the natural fading of memories over time, which shows up most clearly after a night because night is often when we test ourselves again. It remains uncertain whether sleep includes an active forgetting program or whether time alone does most of that work. Yet many lines of research agree that after sleep, we often retrieve the important parts more cleanly. The emotional tone of memory also changes in the night, and that change sits at the border between our first and second branches. During vivid periods late in the cycle, emotional centers in the brain grow more responsive, while stress chemistry tends to stay lower than during wakefulness, which may give the system a rehearsal space for handling feeling without the full cost of fight or flight. One possibility is that memories tagged with strong feeling are replayed in this safer environment, their edges softened, their context broadened, and their usefulness preserved. It remains uncertain whether this softer replay is necessary for all people or all memories. Yet many find that after a full night, the same event can be recalled with more balance, which is a practical outcome regardless of mechanism. Our housekeeping branch reaches into the body as well, because the brain signals with hormones and listens to them too. During deeper, non-rapid eye movement sleep, pulses of growth, supporting hormone tend to rise, and across a normal night, stress-related hormones often dip toward a low point before morning light begins the next climb. The immune system coordinates its own rhythms in parallel, with cells that identify and remember molecular patterns using the night to strengthen their training. We avoid precise figures because timing and magnitude vary with age, health, and schedule, yet the broad shape is robust and sits comfortably within well-established physiology. These processes work best when the order of stages is respected, which brings us back to the city image, where streets are cleared, signage is checked, and archives are updated before dawn. We do not need to manage the process actively, because the design is built to run under ordinary conditions, asking only for regular time, a darker evening, and enough quiet for signals to find their way. When life bends the schedule, the system recovers with practice, another reason for gentleness toward ourselves and others during seasons of change. As we close this branch, we can feel how maintenance and memory form the base upon which other nightly gifts can stand. Creativity, problem-solving, and decision readiness often draw their strength from a network that has been cleaned and filed, and our next section will lift those possibilities into view with the same care we gave to tonight's first crew. We will keep distinctions clear, mark speculations with steady phrases, and return to the shared rhythm that makes listening comfortable. With the floors tidied and the files in order, we can turn to a quieter room in the night, where novel connections appear, sometimes as gentle shifts in perspective, sometimes as solutions that feel both unexpected and strangely obvious once seen. We have all known the difference between pressing on a stubborn idea at the end of a long day and returning to it after sleep to find that a new doorway has opened. The experience is common enough to deserve a careful place in our map, and we approach it with respect for what research can show and with humility about what remains open. Creativity during the night does not announce itself with fanfare, and it is rarely about sudden genius. It often looks like a field cleared of clutter, so patterns can be recognized, a steady mood that allows patience, and small associative steps that, when combined, become a usable path. One possibility is that the nightly alternation of stages changes the balance between systems that evaluate ideas strictly and systems that generate looser associations, allowing us to explore configurations that daytime caution would dismiss too early. During waking hours, Frontal networks that support planning and error checking do valuable work, keeping us aligned with goals and social norms. In portions of the night, especially during periods rich in vivid imagery, those networks relax their grip while emotional and sensory areas become more active, and this shift may widen the search space without losing all structure. A competing view suggests that sleep does not generate novelty so much as reveal it by lowering interference from competing memories and concerns. In this picture, the new path was already possible by evening, but the noise of the day made it hard to notice. The night quiets that noise, weakens unhelpful links, and strengthens helpful ones, so that the next morning attention can follow the shape that was there all along. It remains uncertain whether generation, revelation, or a blend of both best explains creative mornings, and it is likely that different tasks lean on different proportions. What matters for our gentle purpose is that the conditions of the night tend to support a stance that is both more flexible and less burdened. Insight can also grow from the way sleep handles memory. Earlier we spoke of replay that preserves gist while allowing some details to fade. That same process can align material from different days, turning separate pieces into a pattern that feels new. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that during portions of non-rapid eye movement sleep, the coordinated timing between slow waves and brief bursts of activity opens, repeating windows in which recent traces can be compared against older networks, encouraging a form of matching that is slower than waking trial and error, yet broader in scope. When people report waking with a phrase, a diagram, or a step that unlocks a stalled project, this may reflect such matching at work rather than the arrival of a full blueprint. We can approach problem solving with concrete examples that remain sleep-safe. A person practicing a musical passage often finds that fingerings smooth out after rest, which is a motor example, but also a cognitive one, because timing and intention become cleaner together. A student reviewing a concept finds that a fog lifts in the morning, not because the concept changed, but because connections around it are less tangled. A team considering options notices that after a night, they can rank choices with less friction. One possibility is that sleep supports both pruning and regrouping, removing branches that lead nowhere while sketching new joins among the remaining branches. A minority view holds that perceived improvement is mainly due to restored alertness rather than structural change. It remains uncertain how much of the effect belongs to restfulness and how much to reorganization, yet both are friendly to our purpose. Creativity during the night is not only cognitive, it includes emotional combinations that make action possible. An idea that was technically sound at dusk may have carried a tone that felt harsh or misaligned with values. After sleep, the same idea can return with a softened edge and a way to express it that invites cooperation. One possibility is that the rehearsal space of the night allows emotion and reasoning to meet without either one dominating, so that the expression of an idea becomes kinder while the core remains clear. A competing view suggests that mood improvement alone explains the change, and that any idea presented in a calmer state would seem wiser. It remains uncertain whether co-processing of emotion and reasoning is necessary for this effect, but many listeners will recognize the lived pattern and can hold it gently without seeking a single cause. Some of the most comforting reports involve problems that seemed closed until a dream offered an image rather than a sentence. A shape, a color, or emotion suggests a structure, and upon waking the mind translates that image into steps. We do not claim that. Images carry hidden codes, only that the visual system is skilled at representing relations, and that the brain can work with those relations during the night, even when words are resting. One possibility is that in the absence of incoming light, the visual cortex rehearses internal patterns and, in doing so, provides a scaffolding that other systems can use to test arrangements. It remains uncertain whether such rehearsal is necessary for all kinds of insight, yet the presence of imagery across cultures suggests a general tool the brain keeps on the night shift. Decision readiness benefits from this same ecology. When choices feel tangled, effort can harden our stance and narrow our view. After sleep, some of the emotional charge has eased. Alternatives feel less like threats to identity, and trade-offs can be weighed with steadier hands. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that the night reduces coupling between unhelpful pairings, such as a particular option and a fear that does not belong to it, while strengthening links between options and their actual consequences. We wake not with certainty, but with a clearer sense of which questions still matter and which can be set down. Collaboration also enters the picture. In groups that meet, adjourn, and reconvene the next day, creative progress often accelerates after the break. One possibility is that each member's night shift performs private consolidation and quiet generation, and the morning brings a pool of lightly formed ideas that can be combined. A competing view suggests that the pause itself, independent of sleep, restores patience and improves listening, which in turn reveals overlaps that were present all along. It remains uncertain which factor dominates, but both point to the value of gentle pacing in collective work. There is an ethical element to creative nights. When ideas arise in sleep, attributing them can feel uncertain, and humility is a wise companion. Many minds and many days of practice set the stage for what arrives in the morning. We can honor that shared groundwork by avoiding stories that elevate the night into a mystical author while still appreciating the night as a friendly environment for synthesis. Responsible curiosity welcomes credit for preparation and patience, as much as for the moment of recognition. Environment shapes creative outcomes in ways that respect our earlier guidance. Regular timing, dimmer light toward evening, and room for several cycles tend to produce mornings that feel more resourceful. We avoid strict numbers because needs vary, and we avoid prescriptions because our role is not to set rules. The steady message remains that the brain carries tools for insight into the night, and those tools seem to work best when allowed to follow their natural order. Before we close, we mark our boundary again. Claims that a single sleep stage is the source of creativity move beyond established ground. When we say one possibility is that certain stages contribute more to associative thinking, while others contribute more to stabilization, we are naming a direction for research rather than a settled answer. When we say it remains uncertain whether generation or revelation explains most creative mornings, we are protecting honesty, which is a kind of rest all its own. Our next branch will bring emotion to the center, not as drama, but as the ordinary work of softening, integrating, and preparing us to meet the day with steadier judgment. Creativity and emotion are neighbors in the night, and the path between them is short. We will walk it at the same gentle pace, keep facts and possibilities distinct, and let the images of city, cinema, and bending time continue to hold the space while we listen. We return to shared ground and fill it with calm detail, the kind that makes later possibilities easier to weigh, and we begin with a flow that is as quiet as it is important. Inside the brain, between cells that signal and cells that support, clear fluid moves along, channels formed in part by supportive cells that line vessels, and during portions of deep, non-rapid eye movement sleep, the spaces that guide this fluid appear to widen, allowing byproducts of waking activity to travel toward routes where they can be cleared. Researchers refer to this set of pathways as the glymphatic system, a term that joins the supportive glial cells with lymph-like cleaning. One possibility is that the nightly increase in flow lowers the background level of certain waste molecules so that signaling remains precise the next day. It remains uncertain whether changes in flow are uniform across all regions or whether some neighborhoods receive more attention than others. And it is also uncertain how much of this work continues during lighter stages. What we can say with care is that coordinated rest favors movement of fluid, and movement of fluid favors chemical balance. The timing of hormones offers a second anchor for tonight. The brain does not only send electrical messages, it also keeps time with chemical pulses that spread through the blood and guide tissues throughout the body, and these pulses follow a daily pattern shaped by the internal clock and the alternation of sleep stages. During deeper portions of the night, signals that support growth and repair tend to rise in short bursts, and those bursts appear to coordinate protein building and tissue renewal. Toward the darkest part of the night, stress-related hormones often reach their lowest point, then begin a gentle climb before waking that helps set energy for the day. A competing view suggests that these changes reflect restfulness rather than sleep itself, and that any sustained period of low demand on the body would produce similar patterns. It remains uncertain whether sleep stages are required for every aspect of this timing, yet many lines of measurement show that predictable nights make the patterns more regular and waking steadier. Appetite and metabolism also listen to the clock and to sleep. Signals that promote satiety tend to sit higher after adequate rest, while signals that increase hunger tend to be lower. and sensitivity to insulin, the hormone that helps move sugar into cells, tends to be better after nights that include several complete cycles. We avoid precise figures because bodies vary widely, and because food, movement, and stress all interact with these systems, yet the shape of the finding is robust. One possibility is that the night recalibrates the responsiveness of tissues, preparing them to use energy more efficiently the next day. It remains uncertain whether this calibration is led by the brain's timing centers, by local clocks in tissues, or by both in conversation. The immune system adds a third strand to this fact pack. Cells that recognize patterns of pathogens, cells that remember prior encounters, and cells that coordinate the response follow their own daily rhythm, and sleep appears to support both the formation of immunological memory and the deployment of defenses. After nights that allow several cycles to complete, responses to vaccines tend to be stronger on average, and recovery from common infections can be steadier. A competing view suggests that people who sleep well also tend to carry other habits that support immunity, such as regular movement and balanced nutrition, which could explain part of the effect. It remains uncertain how large the independent contribution of sleep is across different contexts, yet experiments that hold daytime habits stable still find an advantage for nights that protect timing and duration. Communication between the nervous system and the immune system relies on small proteins, often called cytokines, messengers that encourage cells to act, rest, or remember. During certain stages of sleep, patterns of cytokine release favor orderly defense and repair, while prolonged sleep loss tends to raise inflammatory signals that can leave the body feeling unsettled and the mind less clear. One possibility is that deep sleep helps bias the immune conversation toward learning rather than alarm, allowing the system to encode what it has seen without treating the entire body as a site of injury. It remains uncertain whether specific sleep features, such as the density of short bursts in stage N2, carry distinct immune signatures, and research continues carefully on that front. We return to the internal clock because timing ties these strands together. A small structure in the brain that keeps near 24-hour time sends daily signals to regions that control temperature, hormone release, and sleep pressure, and it receives information from light-sensitive cells in the eyes, so that morning brightness can reset its phase. When evening becomes more predictable and light softens, the clock's signals align more fully with the desired sleep window, and the night's architecture, including deep stages early and vivid periods later, emerges with less friction. One possibility is that aligning social time with biological time reduces the need for the system to compensate, leading to steadier hormone pulses and less conflicting immune messages. A minority view holds that modern environments can decouple these systems for long periods without major cost. It remains uncertain how resilient each system is to ongoing misalignment, though many studies suggest that when alignment improves, people report steadier mood and clearer mornings. We also keep scale in view. The glymphatic flow we described is not a flood. It is a patterned circulation that repeats each night. Hormonal pulses are not tidal waves. They are quiet signals that arrive in time with stages. Immune coordination is not a constant alarm. It is a training schedule with peaks and rests. Holding these scales correctly helps us avoid worry and supports the calm understanding that rest is about regularity more than intensity. In this sense, small actions that respect timing can have meaningful effects, even if they do not change any single measurement dramatically. Because tonight's topic often intersects with health concerns, we place one gentle boundary. We are speaking about common physiology in typical conditions, and we are not offering medical advice or interpreting individual situations. Our role is to describe patterns that help listeners appreciate the night's design and to mark where knowledge is strong and where questions remain. When we move beyond this fact, pack into the branches that deal with emotion and social life, we will keep the same discipline so that curiosity can rest on clear ground. A word on measurement repeats our earlier care. The studies that observe glymphatic flow often use imaging methods and tracers in animal models and indirect markers in humans, while hormone measurements come from blood or saliva sampled at intervals, and immune effects are tracked through laboratory tests and clinical outcomes. Differences in method and population create differences in results, which is expected in living systems. One possibility is that heterogeneity across studies reflects real diversity in how people sleep and live. It remains uncertain how best to express averages in a way that honors that diversity, so our language tonight favors patterns over narrow estimates. What rests firm after these careful notes is a simple shape. Nighttime supports cleaning at the level of fluid and chemistry, coordinates repair through quiet pulses, and strengthens the body's ability to recognize and remember what it encounters. The design is patient and repeats without needing our constant attention. Our task is not to manage the details, but to give the system ordinary conditions in which it can do what it evolved to do. In the next section, we will pause for our midpoint reminder about boundaries between established findings and thoughtful possibilities. And then, we will bring emotion to the center, describing how the night may soften the edges of feeling and prepare judgment for daylight. For now, it is enough to hold the picture we have drawn, steady and modest, and to notice how much of the day's ease is shaped by the quiet order of the night. We arrive at the middle of our journey and take a measured pause to state clearly where the ground is firm and where we are stepping on softer soil, because a calm mind rests more easily when boundaries are visible. The firm ground includes the broad architecture of sleep stages recorded by surface measurements, the repeating cycles that alternate between non-rapid eye movement and rapid eye movement, the association between deeper stages and physical restoration, the presence of short protective bursts during lighter stages, and the observation that vivid inner imagery is more likely during periods when the eyes move quickly under closed lids. It also includes the basic features of timing, with stronger deep stages tending to appear earlier in the night and longer vivid periods tending to appear later, and the role of a near 24-hour internal clock that aligns these processes with the pattern of light and dark. We add to this firm ground a set of relationships that have been observed many times. After nights that protect timing and duration, people often learn a little more easily, recall with fewer errors, and manage attention with less strain, while the immune system tends to show steadier markers and responses to vaccination can improve. The coordination between electrical rhythms and brief bursts during non-rapid eye movement sleep has been linked to memory support in controlled settings, and the circulation of clear fluid through channels that depend on supportive cells appears to increase during portions of deeper stages. These points are not claims of exclusivity. They are patterns that recur across studies using different methods and different populations. Beyond this ground lies a field of careful possibilities. One possibility is that nightly cleaning of byproducts meaningfully reduces long-term risk of decline. It remains uncertain whether this effect is large, small, or variable across brain regions and life stages. One possibility is that replay during non-rapid eye movement sleep not only stabilizes learning, but also edits and reorganizes it into more flexible forms. A competing view suggests that sleep mainly protects what daytime practice already achieved, and that most structure arises while awake. One possibility is that vivid inner imagery serves rehearsal functions that soften emotional edges. A minority view holds that such imagery is a byproduct of adjustments occurring elsewhere. One possibility is that creative insight is generated by relaxed control in portions of the night. A competing view suggests that insight is revealed, rather than generated, as interference falls. It remains uncertain whether any single mechanism explains these benefits across tasks, ages, and contexts. We also mark the limits of measurement so they do not press on the mind while we rest. Surface recordings average the activity of many cells and cannot see the finest details. Home devices estimate rather than diagnose. Hormone levels shift across the night in pulses and are influenced by age, food, movement, and stress, making any single reading a small part of a larger picture. Imaging of fluid movement is clearest in animal models and more indirect in people. These limits are normal in living systems and are not flaws, only reminders to hold conclusions with care. Language is our tool for keeping peace between what is known and what is open. Each time we cross into interpretation, we will use a small set of phrases that listeners can recognize without effort. One possibility is signals a thoughtful extension. A competing view suggests makes room for more than one path. It remains uncertain whether leaves space where data are mixed. Evidence is limited, but one inference marks a cautious link between findings. A minority view holds that acknowledges legitimate but smaller schools of thought. By standardizing these openings, We make it easy to rest without sorting tone or intention in every sentence. We affirm again that this program does not offer medical advice, diagnoses, or treatment plans. We describe typical physiology and broad patterns that many laboratories and clinics have observed, and we present ideas that are being explored with appropriate caution. Any personal concern is best carried to a qualified professional who can consider individual history, medications, and context. Our role is to provide gentle education and a shared place for curiosity that does not disturb the night. The ethical posture that guides us is humility. We credit the work of many researchers whose measurements built the firm ground we stand on, and we accept that future studies may refine or revise parts of this map. Cooperation between fields, from physiology to psychology to public health, makes better mornings for everyone. Responsible curiosity asks for patience, because living systems change slowly and reveal themselves over time. With the boundary lines clear, we can return to the night with trust. The next section will bring emotion and decision readiness to the center, speaking about how feelings may be processed safely and how judgment often feels steadier after rest. The pace remains slow, the tone remains even, and the distinction between established findings and possibilities remains visible, so that understanding can deepen without waking the body to full alert. We turn now to feeling, not as drama, but as the steady work of arranging inner life so that daylight choices are kinder and clearer. Many listeners recognize the quiet shift that often follows a full night, when yesterday's sharp edges feel less jagged and conversations that seem difficult no longer press quite so hard. We approach this with the same care we brought to maintenance and creativity, holding what is well established and marking where we step into possibility. During periods of rapid eye movement sleep, the systems that help us sense and weigh emotion tend to become more responsive, while the chemistry of stress that prepares the body for fight or flight tends to remain less active than during wakefulness. This combination suggests a training ground where feelings can be revisited with lower bodily cost. One possibility is that emotionally tagged memories are replayed within this gentler setting, allowing context to broaden and intensity to taper. A competing view suggests that what changes is not the memory itself, but the links around it, with sleep-weakening associations that pair a neutral cue with an outsized reaction, and strengthening associations that pair cues with appropriate meaning. It remains uncertain whether replay, relinking, or both processes together best explain the morning's balance, and it is also uncertain how individual differences in temperament shape these effects. Across the night, non-rapid eye movement stages contribute their own support. Earlier, we pictured slow waves coordinating the timing of brief bursts that help stabilize learning. Those same rhythms may help hold emotional material in working order, while the system files and trims. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that orderly alternation between deep, synchronized patterns and vivid inner imagery distributes emotional labor across the night, with earlier cycles favoring stabilization and later cycles favoring rehearsal and integration. A minority view holds that the alternation is incidental, and that any benefits to mood arise primarily from total sleep time rather than stage structure. It remains uncertain which feature is most decisive for a given person, yet the pattern of easier mornings after sufficient, regular sleep is widely reported. Fear deserves a gentle lane of its own in this branch. Many of us have known the relief of facing the same thought after rest and finding that alarm has softened. One possibility is that sleep supports a process similar to what therapists call extinction learning, in which a cue that once signaled danger is experienced safely enough times that the expectation of harm fades. In this picture, the vivid inner imagery of the night allows exposure to the idea of the cue without the full rush of stress chemistry, giving the brain a chance to redraw the map that connects signal and response. A competing view suggests that the change arises from general mood recalibration and not from targeted learning, and that any structured calm period could produce the same easing. It remains uncertain whether sleep carries a unique role in fear softening, or whether it is one helpful path among several, yet the practical outcome is familiar and reassuring. Anger and sadness also pass through this night school. We do not expect the system to erase them, and it would be unwise to hope for that, because these feelings carry information. What sleep seems to offer is a reduction in spillover. After rest, the feeling that belongs to one context is less likely to wash into another. One possibility is that sleep strengthens boundaries between episodes in memory, so that a difficult meeting does not color an unrelated morning task. A minority view holds that the change is explained by restored executive function alone, allowing us to hold focus and resist rumination. It remains uncertain whether boundary strengthening is a distinct process from improved focus, or simply another way of describing it. Either framing points to a calmer day. Decision readiness grows naturally from this softened terrain. Choices are not always hard because information is missing. They are often hard because feelings are tangled. Sleep can help us separate the threads. In the morning, we may notice that an option we resisted now looks workable, or that an option we chased now looks less aligned with our values. One possibility is that during sleep, the brain revisits recent outcomes and quietly updates its internal models, lowering confidence in strategies that did not serve us, and raising confidence in strategies that did. A competing view suggests that the update occurs while awake, and that sleep simply allows disruptive signals to fade so we can hear what we already learned. It remains uncertain where the balance lies, but both accounts yield the same advice for a gentle life, which is to allow decisions to straddle a night when possible. The social side of emotion matters as well. We do not feel in isolation, and our ability to read others has nightly rhythms. Studies that test recognition of expressions and tones often find small improvements after sleep. One possibility is that the night supports tuning of perceptual thresholds, making it easier to detect subtle shifts in voice or face without overreading them. It remains uncertain whether this tuning relies on specific stages or on the overall reduction in noise that follows rest. What we can carry into the day is modesty about our judgments when sleep has been thin, and kindness toward others who are carrying the same weight. Ethical reflection belongs quietly in this branch. When emotion is less urgent, patience returns, and patience supports fairer choices. A minority view holds that ethics belongs entirely to conscious reasoning, and that sleep has no special claim here. We answer with humility that while principles are set by conscious thought, their daily application is supported by mood, attention, and impulse control, all of which benefit from a night that protects timing and duration. It remains uncertain how to weigh each component, but the direction is clear enough for practice. Communities function better when their members meet the day with steadier emotion. Environment, as always, is part of the picture. Noise that startles, light that lingers, and schedules that crowd out consistent timing can press on these emotional processes. There is no single standard that fits every household or neighborhood, only the shared understanding that small reductions in late brightness and sudden sound can be gifts to everyone, including those we never meet. One possibility is that communities which protect the night as a public good see calmer mornings in schools and workplaces. It remains uncertain how large the effect is in different settings, yet the idea is friendly to both science and courtesy. We also honor differences. Not every person feels the same relief after rest, and not every week allows the same regularity. Life includes care work, shift schedules, and seasons of disruption. The research that describes averages does not erase individual paths. Our map tonight offers a direction rather than a demand, and it welcomes adaptation. Where alignment is possible, protect it. Where it is not, carry gentleness into the day and into policy conversations that shape work, light, and noise. Before we close this branch, we return to clarity of language. When we say it remains uncertain whether a single stage plays the dominant role in emotional processing, we are setting a boundary that protects trust. When we say, one possibility is that sleep helps uncouple fear from cues that no longer predict harm, we are naming a reasonable path without claiming proof. When we say a competing view suggests mood restoration explains much of the morning's ease, we are acknowledging good faith debate within the field. This is how scientific stories remain restful while also remaining true. Our next steps will carry the same rhythm into language, learning, and social understanding at night, then into movement without moving, and onward to identity and continuity. Each branch will lean on the same architecture we have already described, and will keep the distinction between firm ground and open field visible. For now, it is enough to notice any small easing in your own chest as you listen, to let the shoulders settle by a finger's width, and to trust that the night is doing the quiet work it has done for as long as people have watched the stars. We arrive at a branch that many people feel without naming, the sense that words come a little easier after sleep, that a phrase learned yesterday sits closer to the tongue, that a conversation seems simpler to navigate, and that tone is easier to pitch at the right level. Language is more than lists of words. It is timing, melody, turn-taking, and the quiet reading of intent. The night appears to support all of these in ways that are gentle and cumulative, building capacity across many evenings rather than transforming it in a single leap. We begin with vocabulary because it offers the clearest foothold. When people study new words in a first or second language and then sleep, recall the next day often improves. This pattern has been observed across age groups and different languages, with larger gains when study is followed by nights that include several full cycles. One possibility is that during non-rapid eye movement sleep, the timing between slow waves and short bursts helps move newly learned word forms from temporary traces into more stable networks, where they can be retrieved with less effort. A competing view suggests that sleep mainly preserves what daytime practice has already achieved by protecting fragile traces from further change. It remains uncertain whether sleep adds structure beyond stabilization for vocabulary specifically, yet the practical result is familiar to learners who often notice that words reviewed before bed feel more available in the morning. Grammar lives in patterns rather than single items, and it benefits from the night as well. When learners are exposed to regularities in how words combine, performance after sleep often shows a small shift toward more consistent use of those regularities. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that replay during the night favors the extraction of common structure, allowing the brain to generalize beyond exact examples. A minority view holds that observed improvements reflect test familiarity and restored alertness rather than true structural learning. It remains uncertain how much of grammatical consolidation depends on specific sleep features versus general restfulness, yet across designs the arc is steady enough to carry into gentle practice. Sound itself has a shape that the brain learns to read. Prosody is the pattern of stress and intonation that gives sentences melody. Children and adults both improve in recognizing these patterns with experience, and sleep seems to support that improvement. One possibility is that during portions of vivid inner experience, auditory regions rehearse internal sequences in the absence of external sound, which may fine-tune sensitivity to rises and falls in pitch that carry meaning. A competing view suggests that the benefits arise from stages earlier in the night when stability, not imagery, is strongest. It remains uncertain which stage contributes most to prosodic tuning, and contributions may vary with age, but the outcome aligns with daily experience. After sleep, it is often easier to hear where a sentence is going. Pragmatics, the use of language in context, depends on more than grammar and sound. It draws on social understanding, memory of past interactions, and expectations about how conversations usually unfold. Sleep's support here is quieter but present. People tested on the recognition of indirect requests, sarcasm delivered in a neutral tone, or subtle shifts in turn-taking sometimes show improved sensitivity after rest. One possibility is that sleep helps align cues across systems, linking voice patterns with likely intentions and reducing the confusion that arises when literal meaning and tone diverge. It remains uncertain whether these gains are driven by language circuits alone or by more general adjustments in attention and emotion that make social reading easier. Second language learning highlights another facet. Pronunciation often benefits from sleep that follows practice, not only because muscles are rested, but because the night appears to refine auditory maps so that the sounds of the new language stand apart more clearly from the sounds of the first. One possibility is that sleep supports category sharpening, the process by which nearby sounds become easier to tell apart. A competing view suggests that exposure alone, repeated across days, creates the categories, and sleep merely marks the passage of time. It remains uncertain which account explains most of the benefit, but learners and teachers commonly use evening review and morning practice because the pattern is kind to progress. Reading and writing also lean on the night, in ways that are modest and helpful. After sleep, readers often show steadier eye movements and fewer regressions on familiar text, while writers report that sentences are easier to shape and that a draft's flow is simpler to assess. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that overnight stabilization reduces interference from competing formulations, so the chosen structure stands more cleanly in mind. A minority view holds that this is only restored patience rather than linguistic change. It remains uncertain how to parse the contributions, and we can accept that both likely play a role. Language at night is not purely individual. It is social from the start. Understanding others requires what psychologists call theory of mind, the ability to consider beliefs and feelings that differ from our own. Tasks that measure this ability sometimes show small improvements after sleep, especially when the tasks require integrating tone, facial expression, and context. One possibility is that the night helps coordinate signals across sensory systems so that we do not rely too heavily on a single cue. A competing view suggests that what improves is inhibitory control, allowing us to hold back our first interpretation and wait for more information. It remains uncertain which path explains the change, yet either path supports more humane conversations. Children show another window into language at rest. Early in life, sleep occupies a larger share of the day, and vivid periods are particularly abundant. Studies find that naps and nighttime sleep both support word learning and category formation in infants and toddlers. We avoid firm statements about mechanisms because measurement at this age is indirect and development moves quickly. The kind conclusion is that providing regular, calm sleep opportunities often helps young learners consolidate what the day presented without asking for extra effort. We also recall that not all language is spoken. Sign languages are full languages with their own grammar and prosody in motion and space. Learners of sign appear to benefit from sleep in ways that mirror spoken language, with improvements in recall, discrimination of hand shapes and movements, and the flow of expression after rest. One possibility is that motor rehearsal during the night supports the precise sequences required for clear signing, while visual areas refine sensitivity to spatial patterns. It remains uncertain how these components share the work, and the parity across modalities is itself a gentle reminder that language is a human capacity expressed through many channels. Because language carries power in communities, ethics belongs here as well. When sleep improves our ability to hear nuance and to choose words with care, public life can become a little less brittle. A minority view holds that civility depends on rules alone and that physiology contributes little. We answer modestly that rules are easier to follow when minds are rested and ears can detect tone without strain. It remains uncertain how large the societal effect could be, but the direction is kind and needs no exaggeration. Environment weaves through every strand. Neighborhood noise that peaks late, lighting that keeps the clock uncertain, or schedules that shrink nights to a narrow slice can make language feel heavier in the morning. One possibility is that schools and workplaces that protect start times, compatible with local daylight, see steadier language performance on average. A competing view suggests that flexibility matters more than fixed times. It remains uncertain which policy choices bring the greatest benefit across diverse settings, and the right answer may differ by place. The steady principle is that protecting regularity helps the night do its quiet work. Before we close, we keep our promise about language that marks boundaries. When we say, one possibility is that sleep sharpens sound categories, we are signaling exploration. When we say a competing view suggests that time and repetition alone explain the change, we are honoring another path. When we say it remains uncertain whether stage-specific features or global restfulness do more for grammar, we are inviting patience and protecting trust. Our next section moves from words to movement without moving, the way the night rehearses skills in the absence of outward action, shaping balance, timing, and coordination for the day ahead. The pace will remain even, the tone gentle, and the distinction between established findings and thoughtful possibilities intact, so that listening stays easy and the body can continue to settle. We turn to skill carried in the body, the kind that lets a hand find the next note on a string, a foot meet the ground at just the right moment, or a spoon settle in a cup without a ripple. These abilities look simple when practiced, yet they rely on precise timing among many parts of the nervous system. Night after night, without a single step taken, those parts refine their conversation so that the next day feels smoother. The rehearsal is quiet, the gains are modest, and together they build a competence that feels like calm. Motor learning begins with patterns that must be both stable and flexible. During the day, we teach the system what we hope to keep by repeating a sequence, and during the night, the brain appears to revisit that sequence in compressed form, strengthening what worked and easing what did not. One possibility is that in non-rapid eye movement, sleep, slow waves provide windows of lowered noise, while brief bursts help stamp the order of movements into longer-term networks, creating a scaffold that will support faster, cleaner action in the morning. A competing view suggests that consolidation depends mainly on the depth of practice while awake, and that sleep simply protects fragile traces from interference. It remains uncertain whether sleep adds new structure to motor programs or mainly guards them, yet the everyday experience of steadier performance after rest supports the value of both practice and night. The cerebellum, a structure at the back of the brain that helps with timing and coordination, plays a central role in this rehearsal. It predicts the consequences of movement and compares those predictions with feedback. One possibility is that during sleep the cerebellum participates in silent simulations, updating its internal models so that tomorrow's predictions are closer to the actual result. A minority view holds that cerebellar learning is tied tightly to active movement and that sleep contributes little beyond general restoration. It remains uncertain how much offline tuning occurs in this structure during the night, but many lines of work suggest that prediction itself becomes less effortful after sleep. Balance belongs to this branch, and it depends on vision, inner ear signals, and pressure cues from muscles and joints. These streams must be integrated so that posture adjusts before we feel a sway. After a full night, people often show steadier stance and quicker recovery from small nudges. One possibility is that sleep supports recalibration among the senses, setting their relative weights so that one channel can carry more responsibility when another is unreliable, such as in low light. A competing view suggests that steadier balance arises from restored attention alone, which improves detection of subtle shifts. It remains uncertain how to divide the credit between sensory tuning and attention, and both are friendly to safer movement. Fine motor skills reveal sleep's quiet help in daily life. A surgeon's stitch, a potter's edge, a child's first letters on a page, all depend on precise sequences in the small muscles of the hand. After rest, hands often feel more certain, and errors become less frequent. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that sleep prunes conflicting microplans, so the chosen sequence stands out more clearly. A minority view holds that the change is only in mood and patience. It remains uncertain how much is mechanical and how much is mental, and many practitioners honor both by pairing deliberate practice with regular nights. Athletic movement shows another facet. Sprint starts, turns in water, and changes of direction on a field all rely on split-second adjustments that tie vision to muscle in a single gesture. Teams that train, recover, and then review often find that tactical choices settle more easily after sleep. One possibility is that the night knits together motor programs with situational cues, so that recognition of a pattern on the field calls up the right movement without conscious assembly. A competing view suggests that time between sessions allows coaches' instructions to take root regardless of sleep. It remains uncertain which element carries more weight, and the pattern favors both: practice with clarity, rest with regularity. Breath offers a softer example. Many skills improve when breathing joins the rhythm of action, and sleep seems to support this coupling by stabilizing the circuits that pace breath at rest. After regular nights, coordinating a slow inhale with a reach or a measured exhale with a release becomes easier, not because we think about lungs when we move, but because the baseline rhythm is steady. One possibility is that sleep strengthens the connection between brainstem breathing centers and networks that set timing for movement. It remains uncertain whether this link is direct or indirect through general calm, and either path suits a life that favors steadiness. Imagery deserves a place here, because many people find that picturing a movement helps as much as repeating it. During portions of the night when inner scenes are vivid, sensory areas become active in the absence of external input, and this activity could serve as a low-cost rehearsal. One possibility is that the visual and motor systems co-activate during these periods in patterns that echo daytime practice, offering the brain a way to test the order of steps without muscle fatigue. A competing view suggests that dream imagery is not specific enough to drive skill change, and that any benefit arises from consolidation during quieter stages. It remains uncertain whether vivid periods contribute directly to motor refinement, yet performers across domains report that forms, plays, and sequences feel more available after sleep, which keeps imagery in our gentle toolbox. Injury recovery adds an important note. When movement is limited, the brain still needs to preserve maps of the body to prevent loss of function. One possibility is that sleep sustains these maps by replaying patterns of activation even when the limb is at rest, helping to guard against the fading that can follow disuse. A minority view holds that active rehabilitation while awake carries nearly all of the burden, and that sleep's role is secondary. It remains uncertain how to apportion the work, and clinicians often protect nights precisely because healing requires both cellular repair and the maintenance of neural representation. Children show how strongly rest and rehearsal are linked. As new walkers learn to balance, and new cyclists find a steady line, nights with regular timing often lead to mornings of visible progress. We avoid mechanistic claims because development varies widely, and many factors shape growth. The gentle principle is that young nervous systems are building maps at a brisk pace, and that sleep offers stable conditions for those maps to settle. Tools and environments matter. Rooms that allow a few cycles to complete, evening light that gives the internal clock a clear signal, and schedules that make space for recovery all support skill. There is no single standard, and resources differ. One possibility is that communities that protect time for rest in schools, apprenticeships, and athletic programs see steadier gains with fewer injuries. A competing view suggests that targeted coaching has a larger effect than any schedule change. It remains uncertain how these levers compare across settings, and the common ground is simple. Practice is kinder when nights are regular. Ethics joins us again in a practical way. When skills improve, responsibility increases. Safer movement protects not only the self but also others nearby, from co-workers who share a site to pedestrians who share a crossing. Respecting sleep is a quiet contribution to that safety. A minority view holds that personal discipline during the day outweighs any benefit from rest. We answer that both are part of care, and that neither substitutes fully for the other. Before we close, we honor the language that keeps boundaries clear. When we say one possibility is that slow waves and brief bursts help stamp movement order into long-term networks, we are naming an interpretation that fits many findings. When we say a competing view suggests protection from interference explains most gains, we are reminding ourselves to hold alternatives. When we say it remains uncertain whether vivid inner scenes directly refine skill, we are leaving room for patient study. This posture lets the body soften, while the mind stays honest. From movement, we will turn to identity and time, asking how we wake feeling like ourselves after hours in which awareness changes shape. The pace will remain even, the images familiar, and the distinction between established ground and open field visible, so that the story continues to support rest as it unfolds. We arrive at a question that feels simple when it goes well, and unsettling when it does not. How do we wake up knowing who we are after hours, in which awareness has changed shape, memories have been rehearsed and trimmed, and inner scenes have played by rules that do not match the bedside clock? The steadiness of identity across the night is one of the most reassuring parts of human experience, and it rests on overlapping systems that keep track of self, place, and time, while allowing the night to do its quiet work. A first anchor is continuity of the autobiographical thread, the story a person tells about their life. During the day, this thread is sustained by networks that link memory, emotion, and a sense of agency. During sleep, those networks do not shut down. They drift into different patterns while core elements remain available for morning reassembly. One possibility is that non-rapid eye movement, sleep stabilizes factual links, and rapid eye movement sleep explores emotional and narrative links, so that upon waking, the story can be retold with both structure and warmth. A competing view suggests that continuity is preserved mainly by the brain's readiness to rebuild the story quickly at waking, drawing on stable long-term memory rather than on processes that run overnight. It remains uncertain whether preservation happens during the night, at the moment of waking, or as a cooperation between both. Orientation provides a second anchor. Many people wake and know the room, the season, and the approximate hour, even before checking a device. The internal clock that keeps near 24-hour time supports this, coordinating temperature, hormone timing, and sleep pressure, so that morning has a familiar feel. One possibility is that this clock also tags memories with gentle timestamps, allowing the brain to predict what should come next when eyes open. A minority view holds that orientation is driven mainly by immediate cues such as light through a window and sounds in the home. It remains uncertain how much of morning certainty comes from internal timing versus external signals, and most days both cooperate to bring us back. There is also a smaller, steadier sense of space at work. The brain keeps maps that track the layout of familiar places and our position within them. During the night, even with movement limited, these maps remain available for quick use. People who wake in darkness usually know which side of the bed allows a safe step and where a door will be. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that sleep preserves these spatial maps through low-level replay, much as it preserves other forms of learning. A competing view suggests that spatial confidence depends on muscle and joint signals at the moment of waking rather than on nightly upkeep. It remains uncertain where most of the credit lies, yet the practical outcome is a safe path to the nearest light or cup of water. Dream time brings a different challenge. Inside vivid inner scenes, sequences expand and contract. We may live a long narrative in minutes, or touch a single moment across a longer interval. Upon waking, we still find our way back to the shared clock. One possibility is that the brain uses separate timing systems, one for coordinating the body with the environment, and another for ordering internal events, and that only the first is bound closely to elapsed minutes. A competing view suggests that dream time is reconstructed at waking, and that only a few anchor points existed during the night. It remains uncertain which account best captures the experience, but either way, the return to the external clock happens quickly enough that daily life proceeds without strain. Identity is not only memory of facts, it is also a feeling of continuity that resists abrupt change. Sleep supports that feeling by reducing noise in the system. When emotional charge has eased and recent learning has been sorted, we are less likely to wake tangled in conflicts that pull identity in opposing directions. One possibility is that during the night, the brain runs a quiet alignment check, reducing tension between values and recent actions where possible, and flagging mismatches for gentle attention. A minority view holds that any sense of alignment is a daytime construction and that sleep contributes mainly by restoring energy. It remains uncertain whether alignment is actively shaped at night, yet many people notice that after rest, it is easier to remember what matters and to act accordingly. Sometimes continuity is challenged, as in the brief disorientation that can follow waking in an unfamiliar place or after a midday nap. These moments remind us how much the brain normally does for us without being asked. Orientation returns in a breath or two as internal timing, spatial maps, and familiar cues from the senses converge. We can greet such moments with patience. They are not signs of failure, only evidence that the night allows states that differ from daytime and that transitions take a moment to complete. Ethics touches this topic in a gentle way. A society that respects the night helps its members wake with intact orientation and steadier identity, which supports safer work, kinder conversation, and better learning. One possibility is that communities that reduce unnecessary late light in shared spaces and protect regular start times see quieter mornings and fewer errors that arise from temporal confusion. It remains uncertain how strong these effects are across different settings, yet the direction is shared by physiology and public courtesy. Culture adds a wider circle. Traditions around sleeping spaces, morning routines, and shared meals often exist to smooth the passage between states. Some cultures favor slow transitions at dawn, others encourage quick engagement. We do not weigh which is best. We note only that these practices recognize the need to bind the thread of identity each day and to bring individuals back into the social rhythm in a way that respects the body's clocks. Before closing, we keep our promise about language. When we say, one possibility is that nightly processes preserve the autobiographical thread for morning reassembly, we are marking a careful extension of evidence. When we say a competing view suggests that morning reconstruction does most of the work, we are acknowledging an alternative, grounded in observation. When we say it remains uncertain whether internal timing or external cues dominate orientation, we are encouraging a stance of patience that is itself sleep-safe. From here, we will step into broader implications in calm order, moving from science to society, to ethics to environment, and then draw a quiet lesson about humility, cooperation, and responsible curiosity. The pace will stay even, the images familiar, and the boundaries between established findings and possibilities visible, so that understanding continues to soften the edges of the day while the body settles toward rest. We gather the threads and consider what they mean when placed side by side, beginning with science at the scale of cells and circuits, moving through daily life in homes and workplaces, pausing with ethics where choices meet values, and widening to the environment that sets the stage for us all. The pace stays even, and each step rests on the distinctions we have kept between established findings and thoughtful possibilities. Science, first. The nightly alternation among stages appears to coordinate maintenance, learning, emotion, and timing in a sequence that is both robust and adaptable. One possibility is that this coordination reflects an evolved compromise, where multiple needs share the same hours by taking orderly turns. A competing view suggests that the sequence is a flexible consequence of general physiology rather than a design for specific outcomes. It remains uncertain whether a single organizing principle governs the order, yet the practical message is steady. Protecting time for several complete cycles allows the system to run the jobs it prefers to run at night. Basic measurements of electrical rhythms, hormone pulses, and immune markers support this picture without requiring us to chase precise targets. From science, we step into society, where shared schedules and expectations shape how easily individuals can benefit from the night. Schools, hospitals, transportation, and service work often begin early or extend late, and each choice nudges the alignment between internal clocks and external demands. One possibility is that modest shifts towards start times that respect local daylight and age-related sleep patterns could improve learning, safety, and mood on average. A competing view suggests that flexibility and personal choice matter more than uniform schedules. It remains uncertain which policy mix yields the greatest benefit across diverse communities, and thoughtful trials continue. What stays gentle and actionable is the practice of noticing when a timetable repeatedly asks many people to fight their clocks, and of exploring adjustments that relieve that friction without harm. The economy has a place in this conversation, and the tone can remain calm. Productivity is not only a product of hours worked. It is also a product of clarity, error rates, and cooperation, all of which tend to improve when nights are regular. One possibility is that organizations that protect predictable rest windows and temper late light in shared spaces see steadier performance and fewer incidents. It remains uncertain how the gains compare to other interventions, such as training or new tools, and a wise approach treats rest as a foundation upon which those tools can stand. Ethics enters with the question of care. When we know that regular nights support safer streets, more patient classrooms, and kinder conversations, we can ask what obligations follow. A minority view holds that sleep is purely private and beyond the reach of shared concern. We answer modestly that while no one can sleep for another, communities do shape noise, light, and timing, and those choices can help or hinder. One possibility is that treating the night as a shared resource encourages policies that reduce sudden late noise, dim unneeded brightness, and avoid schedules that repeatedly pull people far from natural timing. It remains uncertain how far such policies should extend in different places, and respectful dialogue is part of the work. Justice also belongs here. People who work nights, care for others, or live near bright or noisy infrastructure often carry a larger burden. Recognizing this does not demand a harsh tone. It invites cooperation. Simple supports such as quieter windows, darker curtains, predictable shifts when possible, and access to brief recovery naps in appropriate settings can make a meaningful difference. Evidence is limited, but one inference is that small environmental changes compound when applied across many nights. We widen again to the environment that hosts our evenings. Light carries safety, and it also sets the phase of the internal clock. One possibility is that communities that adopt lighting designed to lower glare, reduce excessive blue-enriched brightness at night, and aim light where it is needed help both human timing and local ecosystems that follow dark and light cues. A competing view suggests that technological advances in personal devices make community adjustments less necessary. It remains uncertain how responsibility should be shared between private and public steps, and both paths can be friendly to the night. Noise sits beside light. Sudden peaks wake the body's guard systems and can break the orderly sequence of stages. Many cities already manage noise for health and courtesy. Extending those efforts with attention to late peaks, predictable quiet windows, and smoother traffic patterns can support everyone's internal work. One possibility is that quieter nights reduce next-day errors in transportation and industry. It remains uncertain how large the effect is across settings, and the direction is calm and constructive. We return to home because most nights end there. Gentle routines that do not require strict discipline can make nights more repeatable. Dimming lights in the hour before rest, letting the last drink or screen sit a little farther away, and keeping wake time roughly steady across the week are simple patterns that many find helpful. We do not prescribe. We describe. One possibility is that families and housemates who adopt a shared understanding of the night's value find it easier to maintain these patterns without pressure. It remains uncertain which small steps help most for a given household, and patience allows experimentation without strain. Culture adds warmth to these implications. Songs, stories, and customs around evening have long helped people transition from outer work to inner maintenance. Renewing such practices with modern knowledge does not require abandoning devices or schedules. It asks only that we respect the night as more than absence. It is a phase of life with its own work to do. Recognizing that work supports humility about what we can and cannot control, and invites cooperation across science, design, policy, and personal habit. We end this section with a soft reflection. The night is not a test to pass. It is a partner that carries part of the effort of being human. When we let it cleans, sorts, practices, and softens in our stead. When we cannot, it waits for us without judgment. Holding this posture helps each person make small, kind choices and helps communities weigh options in a way that honors both safety and rest. Our next step draws a brief meta-lesson from the whole journey, gathering the themes of humility, cooperation, and responsible curiosity before we ease toward a hopeful close. The cadence remains unhurried, and the boundary between firm ground and open field stays visible so the body can continue to settle while the mind feels gently informed. We have walked through maintenance and memory, creativity and feeling, language and movement, identity and time, and each step has pointed toward a larger pattern worth naming before the story turns toward rest. The pattern is simple to state and steady to practice. Humility keeps our claims gentle, cooperation widens what any one of us can see, and method holds the two together so that knowledge grows without pressing the body into urgency. This is our meta-lesson, quiet enough to fall asleep to, and strong enough to carry into daylight. Humility begins with the limits of measurement. The brain is busy at night, yet most of what we see comes from averages taken across many people, or from signals at the surface that stand in for activity deep within. One possibility is that future tools will reveal finer patterns that change parts of this map. A competing view suggests that the broad outline will hold, and that new detail will mostly refine rather than overturn what we have described. It remains uncertain how much revision lies ahead, and humility makes room for either path. In practice, this means speaking in a way that is both useful and provisional, allowing sleep to be a partner now while welcoming better understanding later. Cooperation enters as soon as we notice how many disciplines contribute to a single night. Neurophysiology offers waves and bursts. Endocrinology offers pulses and clocks. Psychology offers learning, mood, and attention. Public health offers lessons about schedules, light, and noise. Education and athletics, architecture and urban design all add their perspectives. One possibility is that the best outcomes arise when these fields work side by side, each shaping environments and expectations in modest ways that add up across months and years. A minority view holds that progress belongs mainly to one field at a time, and that integration creates confusion. It remains uncertain how to balance specialization and synthesis in each setting, and experience suggests that shared projects with clear goals help keep the conversation grounded. Method is the quiet craft that lets humility and cooperation meet. The scientific method asks clear questions, compares options that differ by only a few features, and reports results in enough detail that others can test them. It also encourages correction. When new findings appear, older claims are tested again, and the map is updated. One possibility is that this slow, repeated approach is not only good for accuracy but also good for sleep, because it keeps our language even and avoids the swing from hype to disappointment that can make minds restless. It remains uncertain whether calmer communication changes behavior in measurable ways, and the posture is kind either way. We keep the tone steady so the story can be heard at night without waking anxiety. Humility also fits everyday practice. We rarely know the exact number of hours that will best serve a specific person in a specific week, and bodies change with age, season, and circumstance. One possibility is that the most sustainable habits grow from listening and adjustment rather than rigid targets. A competing view suggests that firm goals work better because they remove decision burden. It remains uncertain which strategy helps most across time, and both can be used gently. We can set a simple anchor, such as a regular wake, time, and allow the rest to adapt to travel, care work, and events, returning to the anchor when life permits. Cooperation extends to households and workplaces. We share walls and streets, shifts and start times, doorways and sidewalks. Small acts of consideration compound. Lowering the volume in late hours, dimming unneeded lights, keeping consistent meeting times when possible, and allowing quiet breaks during long nights of care are actions that cost little and help everyone's internal work proceed. One possibility is that institutions that adopt such habits see steady gains in safety and mood. It remains uncertain how large those gains will be in any one place, and the direction is aligned with both courtesy and physiology. Method, at scale, becomes policy that learns. Communities can try later starts in some schools, quieter lighting on certain streets, or shift rotations designed to reduce strain, and then measure outcomes in attendance, errors, and well-being. A competing view suggests that life is too complex for such trials to be definitive. It remains uncertain how conclusive any single experiment can be, and a sequence of small, well-designed steps often provides enough guidance to act without overpromising. The aim is not to find a perfect rule, but to discover patterns that are good enough to help many people most of the time. Humility guards how we tell stories about dreams and insight. The night may offer images that feel meaningful, and it may soften strong feelings so that better choices appear. One possibility is that inner scenes sometimes help us reorganize ideas and plans. A competing view suggests that meaning is assigned in the morning, and that the night's role is mainly to clear noise. It remains uncertain which path explains a given experience, and either way we can hold such moments with gratitude and a light touch, crediting both practice and rest for what arrives. Cooperation widens the circle of benefit. When information about sleep reaches families and caregivers, teachers and supervisors, designers and planners, the number of small improvements available to ordinary nights increases. One possibility is that broad access to simple guidance about light, sound, timing, and expectation reduces strain without raising anxiety. It remains uncertain how best to deliver that guidance across cultures and schedules, and working with local voices usually helps. Method protects against turning gentle patterns into strict rules. Tonight we have favored principles over prescriptions, because living systems resist narrow instructions. Keep evenings softer than mornings. Let several cycles run when possible. Treat the night as a shared resource. Pause claims at the word enough. These are shapes more than numbers, and they adapt to seasons, ages, and communities. One possibility is that people follow shapes more readily than strict targets, because shapes fit into many lives. It remains uncertain whether this holds across all groups, and the flexibility itself eases the mind. From humility flows patience, from cooperation flows care, and from method flows trust. Together they form a posture that makes it easier to listen at night and to act without haste during the day. The brain will continue to do its work whether or not we attend to it, yet attention can make the path smoother. When we see the night as a patient partner, we are less likely to fight it and more likely to shape our environment in its favor, for ourselves and for one another. As we prepare to move into the closing arc, we keep one more boundary visible. We have described common physiology and offered carefully marked possibilities. We have not offered medical advice or individual plans. If questions remain after rest, they deserve a conversation with a professional who knows your history and your needs. That conversation is part of cooperation too. The remaining sections will slow the breath further, gather hope without urgency, and guide the mind toward a relaxed ending. The cadence stays unhurried, the images remain familiar, and the distinction between knowledge and possibility stays clear, so that the story can settle gently as the night continues its quiet care. We enter the gentle ascent toward rest by gathering what is simple, repeatable, and kind, the elements that do not require special equipment or strict rules, only the recognition that small patterns, kept most days, can shift the tone of a week. Hope in this context is not a promise of perfect sleep. It is the confidence that bodies are designed to cooperate with the night when we give them ordinary conditions, and that communities can make those conditions easier to find. We start with light because it is a steady lever. Morning brightness reminds the internal clock where the day begins, and evening softness lets it know where it ends. One possibility is that stepping into daylight soon after waking, even for a few minutes when weather allows, helps the next night arrive on time. A competing view suggests that consistency of wake time matters more than light for many people. It remains uncertain which lever carries more weight across seasons and latitudes, and the two can be paired kindly. Wake at a steady time when possible. Greet the day with a bit of brightness, and let evening gently dim. Sound follows. Nights become friendlier when peaks are fewer. Doors close softly, devices set to quiet modes, and conversations moved away from shared walls reduce the chance that the brain's guard systems are startled into wakefulness. One possibility is that predictable sounds, like a fan or distant rain, create a stable background that makes unexpected noises less salient. A minority view holds that any sound is a risk to continuity. It remains uncertain which approach suits each household, and noticing how your own body responds is a good guide. Temperature contributes in ways that are modest but real. Cooler air often supports deeper stages early in the night, while warm coverings provide comfort without raising overall heat. We do not specify numbers because comfort is personal, and climates vary widely. One possibility is that small adjustments near bedtime, such as light bedding in warm seasons or breathable layers in cool ones, help the body's natural drop in core temperature unfold. It remains uncertain whether temperature changes drive sleep architecture directly or mainly signal safety and stability. Either path is workable and gentle. Screens are part of many evenings, and the aim here is not to remove them, but to make peace with their timing and intensity. Lowering brightness, increasing distance, and choosing calmer content in the last stretch before rest can reduce the sense that the eyes must stay on guard. A competing view suggests that content matters far more than light, and that engaging, emotional material keeps systems alert regardless of brightness. It remains uncertain how these factors compare in any one person. The practical approach is to combine softer visuals with gentler themes, when the goal is to drift, and to place lively viewing a little earlier. Food and drink act as quiet signals. Heavier meals close to bedtime can ask the body to stay in a mode that competes with the first deep stages. Very late caffeine can keep alert circuits engaged. One possibility is that leaving a comfortable margin between large meals and lights out allows digestion to settle while still meeting cultural or family routines. It remains uncertain how long that margin should be for each person, and experiments can stay kind and small. A sip of water nearby often prevents the need to rise, and placing the glass within easy reach is a simple comfort. Ritual helps the clock read the room. A brief pattern repeated most nights becomes a cue. Some people fold a blanket, set aside the day's list, and dim a single lamp. Others read a few pages or listen to gentle science like this. 1. The possibility is that the brain links the sequence to a shift toward inward work, making the transition smoother over time. A competing view suggests that any consistent act would serve as well, and that the nature of the ritual matters less than its repeatability. It remains uncertain which features of a routine most support the night, and what matters most is that it feels easy to maintain. Movement during the day supports stillness at night. Strolls, stretches, and tasks that ask muscles to coordinate give the system material to file and a clear signal that the active portion of the day has done enough. We avoid exact prescriptions because abilities and schedules differ. One possibility is that light movement earlier and calmer movement later offer a balance that carries into rest. It remains uncertain whether specific timing windows are required, and many people find that consistency over weeks matters more than perfect placement in a single day. Relationships are part of the routine. Evenings that end with small kindnesses lower the background tension that can push alertness into the night. A word of thanks, a quiet check-in, and plans set gently for morning allow the brain to set worries down. One possibility is that this practice reduces late rumination, freeing cycles for the night's internal work. A competing view suggests that personal temperament dominates rumination, regardless of evening conversation. It remains uncertain how much social tone can shift mental noise for each person, and practicing courtesy costs little while often helping much. Workplaces can share the load. Predictable shift rotations, respect for quiet hours in digital tools, and meeting times that avoid very early starts or very late ends make it easier for the night's order to run. One possibility is that teams that adopt such patterns see steadier attention and fewer errors. It remains uncertain which combination of practices fits each field, and learning together is part of responsible curiosity. Small trials, clear measurement, and open feedback keep the process calm. Schools can help as well. Age-sensitive start times, dimmer hallways near closing, and gentle expectations about evening assignments recognize that developing brains depend on reliable cycles. A competing view suggests that content quality outweighs schedule in education outcomes. It remains uncertain how best to balance curriculum and timing, and communities can tune both with patience. In homes where care work makes nights irregular, compassion comes first. New parents, family caregivers, and shift workers carry demands that bend the usual arc. One possibility is that protective habits can still be placed around the edges, such as brief wind-down cues, short moments of morning light, and naps that respect the internal clock's quieter valleys. It remains uncertain which supports matter most in each situation. Sharing the load where possible, and asking institutions to design, with care work in mind, honors the reality that rest is a shared resource. We return to hope as a modest, practical shape. Most of the night's benefits arrive from patterns we can approach without strain: light that tells time gently, sound that surprises less, routines that invite the mind inward, food and movement balanced in everyday ways, schedules that respect clocks as much as calendars. None of these require perfection. Each is an invitation. Taken together, they make it more likely that the brain's quiet city can do its work while the body lies still. As we near the closing arc, we keep our careful language in view. We have offered common physiology and softly marked possibilities, not personal prescriptions. It remains uncertain whether any single change will shift a given week, and the path stays patient. The night is a partner. It is ready when we are, and forgiving when we are not. We will now ease toward the final cadence, where we gather comfort without urgency and offer a cast. Soft good night. If you prefer, you may let your attention drift and meet only the tone, allowing the words to pass by like distant lights on calm water. The science will keep until morning. The body knows the way. Before we settle into the closing cadence, we pause once more to mark the edges of knowledge, to state plainly what sits on firm ground and what remains open, and to place our role within those boundaries so that trust can rest alongside you. The aim is ease, not urgency. A calm mind sleeps more easily when the map is labeled, the lights are low, and there are no sudden turns. The firm ground includes the broad architecture of sleep observed for decades in laboratories and clinics. Non-rapid eye movement and rapid eye movement alternate in cycles that usually last under 2 hours, with deeper stages tending to cluster earlier in the night and longer vivid periods tending to appear later. Electrical rhythms at the scalp show slow waves during deeper stages and brief bursts known as spindles during lighter non-rapid eye movement. Hormone timing follows the day's arc, with signals supporting growth and tissue repair rising in short pulses during the night, and stress-related chemistry tending to dip before dawn rises again. The immune system coordinates its work with these rhythms. People who protect regular rest generally recall more accurately, maintain attention more steadily, and show healthier patterns in measures of mood, learning, and response to vaccination. We also stand on firm ground when we say that the brain remains active during sleep, though its activity is repurposed. Energy is directed inward toward maintenance, consolidation, and coordination. Clear fluid moves more freely through certain pathways during portions of deeper sleep, carrying away byproducts of waking activity. Memory traces formed during the day are stabilized and, at times, reorganized. Motor skills, language elements, and emotional tone often feel cleaner in the morning, not because nothing happened, but because the right kinds of things continued to happen while the body was still. Now we walk carefully into the open field. One possibility is that increased fluid flow during deep sleep meaningfully reduces long-term risk of decline by clearing particular proteins. It remains uncertain whether the size of this effect is large, small, or variable across brain regions and ages, and research is ongoing. One possibility is that slow waves and spindles open coordinated windows that allow the hippocampus to replay daytime patterns, while neocortical areas strengthen longer-term representations. A competing view suggests that sleep's role is mainly protective, keeping fragile traces safe while time itself knits them in. It remains uncertain how much structure is added by night versus preserved by night, and both pictures explain parts of what people notice after rest. One possibility is that vivid inner imagery provides a rehearsal space where emotions can be revisited with lower bodily cost, and fear responses can be softened when they no longer serve safety. A competing view suggests that mood normalization alone explains the easier mornings, with little need to invoke targeted emotional learning. It remains uncertain which mechanism dominates for a given person, task, or season of life. One possibility is that creative insight is generated by relaxed control during portions of the night, when associative networks range more widely. A competing view suggests that insight is revealed rather than generated, as interference falls and the mind can finally notice what practice already prepared. It remains uncertain which description fits most mornings, and either way, the night is a friendly partner. Measurement limits deserve a gentle line of their own. Surface recordings average the activity of many neurons. They do not read single cells. Hormone levels arrive in pulses and shift with age, nutrition, and stress. So any single reading is only a moment in a moving river. Imaging of fluid flow is clearest in animal models and more indirect in people. Consumer devices estimate stage proportions from movement and heart signals. They are useful for patterns across weeks, but not for diagnosis. These limits are not flaws. They are reminders to hold language steady and claims modest while the field advances. Our standardized phrasing keeps the distinction visible without waking vigilance. When you hear one possibility is, we are exploring. When you hear a competing view suggests, we are widening the lens. When you hear evidence is limited, but one inference is, we are marking a cautious bridge between findings. When you hear a minority view holds that, we are naming a serious alternative without overstating its reach. When you hear it, remains uncertain whether, we are leaving room for the studies yet to come. This consistency allows curiosity to relax into rhythm rather than bracing for a debate. We add two soft, practical boundaries. First, this program offers education and ease, not medical advice. It does not diagnose, treat, or prescribe. If a personal concern persists, if sleep is regularly painful, frightening, or severely disrupted, a qualified professional who knows your history is the right next step. Bringing questions from quiet learning into that conversation is a good use of cooperation. Second, nothing here promotes rigid rules. Bodies differ, weeks differ, cultures and climates differ. What helps is regularity when available, gentleness when not, and patience while patterns settle. Fair use and fair credit sit nearby. We have drawn on public, well-established findings in physiology, psychology, and related fields, while avoiding proprietary phrasing and private claims. When a detail looked like an interpretation unique to a particular group rather than a shared constant, we labeled it as a possibility, or placed it among competing views. The aim throughout has been transformation in service, of clarity and rest, keeping public facts intact and speculations clearly marked, so that the story stands on its own and invites sleep rather than comparison. Ethics returns briefly, because framing matters. Sleep science touches work schedules, classroom hours, lighting, and noise, and those decisions affect neighbors, co-workers, and children. Responsible curiosity encourages small trials, clear measures, and community voices, with a willingness to adjust when outcomes differ by place. A minority view holds that such adjustments should be left to private choice alone. We answer quietly that nights are partly shared. Streets and devices, shifts and alarms, all cross thresholds. Courtesy joined to evidence is a steady guide. As we close this late disclaimer, we return to the simplest, most hopeful truth that survives every update. The night is already doing its work. Your participation is less about control and more about permission. Light that softens, sound that surprises less, routines that invite the mind inward, schedules that respect clocks as well as calendars. These are invitations, not tests. When taken most days, They allow maintenance, memory, emotion, and timing to proceed in the order the body prefers. In the final segment, we will offer a quiet good night, drawing together gratitude for the work that continues without our supervision and a gentle wish for the day to come. If you prefer, let attention drift now and meet only the cadence. The knowledge can rest until morning. The rhythm will carry you. We arrive at the quiet turn, where understanding gives way to permission, where the map can be folded and set on the bedside table, and where the body is invited to hand its careful work to the night. The story has walked through maintenance and memory, creativity and emotion, language and movement, identity and time, and then stepped outward into homes and streets, schedules and light. What remains is simple: a thank you to the organ that keeps vigil, a soft shape for the next few breaths, and a hope that tomorrow meets you with steadier ground. You can let the pictures from earlier settle into the background, the city within dimming its outward lamps while inner crews move along familiar routes. The library closing its public desk, while pages are mended and shelves are put in order. The small clocks aligning, one that keeps the day, one that keeps the tasks, and one that keeps the music of feeling from drowning out the voice that weighs and chooses. Nothing here demands effort now. The work belongs to the hours ahead, and the system knows what to do. A good night can be as practical as the smallest ritual. If it helps, choose one gentle sequence to mark this moment, a glass within reach, a device set aside, a sentence to yourself that the night is enough. There is no rule to follow. It is the repetition that matters, the quiet handshake between intention and the internal order that follows. When patterns align, tiredness shows up, not as defeat, but as a sign that maintenance is ready to begin. We have also spoken of humility, cooperation, and method, and those virtues fit the closing as well. Humility means acknowledging that some nights will be thin and some mornings will feel heavy, and that this is part of being alive rather than a failing to correct. Cooperation means allowing others to sleep too, with small acts that cost little and carry far. Method means returning to simple steps without judgment, because what helps most is what can be kept. Light that softens, sound that surprises less, a wake time held when possible, a kindness at the door. You have heard boundaries and possibilities, and both can be set down now. The language that distinguishes facts from open paths has served its purpose. The body does not need footnotes to find the first deep stage. It asks for safety, for a room that signals night, and for a chance to complete a few cycles without interruption. The brain will adjust clocks, carry, fluid, replay traces, trim and link, soften edges, and prepare you to meet the next day with a little more ease than the last. Some of these processes will be measurable, many will not, and that is fine. The feeling of waking with a steadier grip on the thread of your own story is enough for a Tuesday, or any day that follows. If you would like a simple cadence to anchor these minutes, you can borrow this one. Inhale gently, counting 4 in your own time. Pause for a brief moment as if noticing a page turning. Exhale a little longer than the inhale, perhaps to 5 or 6, as if setting a book down. Repeat once or twice. The numbers are not important. What matters is the shift toward longer exhales and the sense that each breath begins a quieter line of thought and ends a sentence you no longer need to finish. With each softening, the night receives more of the work. Gratitude has a place here, not as obligation but as a calm recognition of what continues without your supervision. The cells that recycle and rebuild, the circuits that keep the heart and breath steady, the systems that attend to balance even when you turn in place without waking. The quiet dialogue between memory and meaning that will make a conversation easier tomorrow. The brain's love is practical. It is expressed in vigilance and repair, in sorting and rehearsal, in a devotion to continuity that asks nothing in return except a darkened room and a little time. We keep our neutral tone about plans and promises, because control is not the point. Nights will vary, seasons will shift, care work and travel will rearrange priorities. You are allowed to meet life as it comes. On the weeks when regularity is possible, let it be a gift. On the weeks when it is not, let patience be the gift instead. The system is resilient, and rhythms can be found again. If you feel like it, there is a soft invitation you can ignore or accept without effort. You may share, at another time, where you are listening, from, and what hour the clock showed when you began, not as a score, but as a way of mapping how many corners of the world drift to rest under the same questions and the same sky. It is a quiet way to remember that the night is a shared resource and that wonder travels well. Before the final wish, one last small shape for the room itself. The light is low enough that surfaces lose their edges. The air is a little cooler than the day was. Sounds have taken a step back. What remains is the feeling of fabric against skin, the weight that tells your body where it is, and the knowledge that if you wake briefly and turn, the system will know to resume, without a summons from the clock. You are not required to hold the night up, it holds you. And so we close, not with urgency, but with a steady confidence in ordinary processes that have served people for as long as there have been evenings. May the crews within begin their routes. May the library tidy its pages. May the clocks agree. May whatever needs softening move one notch toward ease. May whatever needs remembering find a clearer path. May whatever needs setting down rest by the door until morning. Good night to the mind that will sort and practice. Good night to the body that will heal in small, decent ways. Good night to the homes and streets that make room for shared rest. Good night to the work and study that will be met with better attention when it returns. Good night to the sense of self that will wake with the same name and a little more steadiness. Let the breath lengthen. Let the jaw loosen. Let the shoulders lower by a finger's width. Trust the familiar order to take its turn. The night is a partner. It is here. It is ready. It will carry its share.